Hey y'all, just wanted to create a quick video to serve as an overview of what we mean when we say IXD or UI or UX. There's so many different acronyms in this industry to describe a similar role. In fact, if you just do a quick Indeed search for UI designer, you're likely to find a lot of different titles that come up that kind of sort of represent the same thing. In my 10-year career, I've seen this similar role described as IXD or UXD or UID or UED or XD or VD or GD or PD or FED or HCI or UXR or UXS. There's so many different acronyms or ways to describe a similar role. Now, the caveat to that is, like in any profession or career, there's going to be niches or specialties that form as you advance in your career that might describe a certain aspect or a certain vertical or realm of a certain career path. For instance, you might specialize as a graphic designer, but find people who really specialize in type design or who really specialize in brochure design or page layout. And that's great, and that's okay. And similarly, in the UI UX space, you're going to find people who really specialize solely in UX research or solely in front-end development or solely in strategy, UX strategy. And that you'll see that develop like in any industry as you pursue your career and you grow in that space. But just in this quick Indeed search, you see I searched for UI designer and you see UI UX. You see people also searching for graphic designer or web designer or product designer. For our sake in this course, it all kind of sort of means the same thing. And we're going to look at that as a UI UX designer. So you might be curious as to why you should even choose a career path as a UI UX designer. And let me just say, for starters, it's a lot of fun. I was classically trained as a graphic designer in the same program that you all are currently in. And I am very passionate about and tend to believe that folks who come out of a graphic design program fundamentally have a great foundation to grow in a career as a UI UX designer. Think about it. You've already learned about typography and layout and the grid and hierarchy. And those are some of the fundamental principles that I really think serve to set you up to have a great career in UI UX. In UI UX, you get to work with mixed media design, technology, psychology. You work on screen interface design. And so things that you're naturally doing every day, whether that's checking Facebook on your phone or Instagram, or interacting with Airbnb apps or Google products, you're already interacting with so many apps and products that will bring a wealth of knowledge to you as a UI UX designer. And really, in these principles of psychology and hierarchy and typography, you're already doing a lot of these things in probably your graphic design projects you've already done so far. And so you're just translating it to a different media, that being now digital on-screen design. And there's some great tools that we're going to cover in this course that serve as a foundation for becoming a great UI UX designer. It's also one of the most in-demand careers for designers that I know of. And there's a lot of great opportunity to get started in your career. From my experience too, everything is moving to screen-based and consumer-based approach when it comes to marketing and creativity. And so setting yourself up as a UI UX designer really ensures that you have a lot of impact and a lot of great development as a career path as you move beyond the school. And so what is IXD? And I think this is a great graphic, one of the best that I've seen, and I kind of adapted it from what I saw online, is really speaking to what is the difference in UI, UX, and IXD. And you can see on the far left there in this Venn diagram, what we call it, these overlapping circles, that UI design serves as to what happens on screen. Really, the acronym stands for user interface, UI. On the far left, on the far right, you see UX or user experience. It's what's happening in front of the screen. The human is now involved. It's their experience with the interface. And IXD sits right in the middle. It's the interaction design. So how does the user interact with the interface? And what might their experience be there in that cross section of the middle? Saw this great definition supplied by interactiondesign.org. It's a great website that you will be referencing throughout the semester. That interaction design can be understood in simple but not simplified terms. It is the design of the interaction between users and products. Most often when people talk about IXD, the products tend to be software, products like apps and websites. The goal of interaction design is to create products that enable the user to achieve their objectives or their goals in the best way possible through that interface. And design thinking can be applied in almost any situation, not just limited to the screen. Think about this great GIF here of Charlie Brown, and they're pulling on the door. And you've probably experienced, whether you're entering a space and you might see a sign that says push pull, but the device that you're doing it doesn't really translate. And so there can be some confusion. And so while we're going to focus on on-screen technology, UX isn't limited just to the screen, or design thinking isn't limited just to the screen. It's focused on solving the right problem based on what the user's needs are. And so you can see in this GIF, maybe just by simply changing the handle or by having a label that says push, perhaps you would have avoided this awkward moment where Charlie Brown comes in and pushes the door open while she's trying to pull on the door itself. Think about Disney has the Magic Band, where that's a form of user experience. Everything's loaded to that band, and so you don't have to interact with an app or printing out a lot of papers. You can just go up and scan that band, and then your points come with you as a part of that. So it can be physical, it can be digital, like you see here on the bottom with app design and with watch design, and so different screens, different verticals. All require different types of design and interaction based off what those users' problems might be and what their needs might be as well. It can also translate to video game design and also TV design. And so a lot of different verticals as you start to think about how UI and UX can be applied across any number of verticals, whether that's interaction with different types of technologies on screen or off screen. It's really just focusing, like I said, solving the right problems based on what the user's needs are. And like any profession or any career or vertical, there are different processes that are in place that a lot of UI UX designers fall back into to really serve as a great foundation for how do we solve problems, how do we get from A to B. So just want to go over those with you today real quick. Great UX designers display a high level of empathy and critical thinking and problem solving and creative strategy. And we typically use these four verticals to get us from, what is the concept to delivering that end experience and then iterating on it. And those four verticals tend to fall into discovery and research, wireframing, designing, and then testing and learning. And we're going to dive into each of those verticals here in the next few minutes. Let's start with discovery and research. This is where you're asking the questions of why and how. This opening stage, you're going to do a lot of research and understanding about who your audience is and what their problem might be and how might what might that solution look like that you would be providing them. This is the stage where you explore and you ask questions so that you don't end up making the wrong product. I've learned many lessons over the course of my career that when we don't ask the user what they want, we end up designing the wrong thing, and then it often comes back to bite us after we launch it and we get terrible feedback. Some of the common deliverables that you're going to produce during this stage are personas, which is just a snapshot of who your user is. Mood boards, which is just gathering inspiration as to what your product might look like. You're going to do research and asking users open-ended questions as to what they might expect to see in this product or this feature or this app that you're designing. You're going to conduct interviews to see how they might experience similar applications as to the one that you might be building. And then you're going to create user journeys like you see here with Kate Davis, where you're looking at where the users, what the user's journey is, what their experience is, and what are maybe some outside factors that might cause them to be dissatisfied or satisfied with your service. Each of these deliverables are going to be broken down in another video that we're going to look at here in this course as well. Let's move on to phase number 2, the wireframing and prototyping phase. This is personally my favorite stage. I remember as a part of the graphic design program doing tons and tons of thumbnails. And if I'm honest, at the time, I really didn't like it too much. But now, having been in the career, I see the value of going to paper first and going to wireframing or sketching first, because it allows you to get your ideas on paper where it's cheap and you don't have to worry about getting too specific about what the user interface is going to look like. And so really dive into this part of the course as we look at wireframing and prototyping, as we'll explore throughout the semester. But this is where you want to experiment and see what solutions are going to stick and what solutions resonate with your audience. In this stage, you're going to test what you're creating with your users. You can take these paper prototypes, and for this example that you see here on the right-hand side, where the user has sketched out what it might be, you can actually mimic what that's going to look like on screen, as you can see, as these individuals did here, where they're actually linking up screen to screen what it's going to look like, and put that in front of your user and ask them, hey, is this what you would expect to see on this interface? Or what would you expect happen when you click this button that you just quickly sketched out here in this wireframe? So it's really a great time to experiment, to iterate, and just create concepts, different concepts of what this user interface might be. Some common deliverables that you would produce in this are paper wireframes, digital wireframes, which we'll get into a little later on in the course, and prototypes as well. In this third phase, this is what you would typically imagine a UI UX designer to produce, but the process is such a great part of the experience as well. Here is the end user interface, the high fidelity UI design that you would expect if you were to open something up on an app or pull something up on a website or to look at something on your watch or on your TV. This is the time where you make your sketches come to life. You'll make sure everything is consistent and that it's accessible and intuitive. And in this stage of your prototypes will really closely reflect what that experience is going to look like after it's been built and developed. And there are some great tools that you as a designer can leverage that really help mimic that experience before a development colleague or coworker might get involved to actually code it and bring it to life. And that's the great thing that I've seen over the course of my career for a UI UX designer. The great question always used to be, should designers code? And maybe it's still a great question, and we'll probably explore that a little later on in the course. But you don't have to know code in detail to be able to be a great UI UX designer. I'm not a great coder, and I will openly admit that, but I know enough about code to be a little dangerous. And I think that's a great benefit for a UI UX designer to have, is that even though we're not going to dive into coding in this course, I would encourage you to explore, what does the HTML structure look like? What is CSS? And we might provide some videos to go into that a little bit here, although we won't be focusing on that in this introductory course of UI UX design. Some common deliverables that you as a UI UX designer would be expect to deliver in this phase is a style guide. And we're going to talk about that in this course, UI design, prototypes, and then perhaps a handoff document to your development friends who might be building this interface that you've designed. All right, it doesn't end there. And so we go on to the fourth and final stage, is to test and to learn. Think of this as the peer review or the peer critique, but those peers are the actual end users of your product. So this is the time for you to learn from the end user. And unlike classic works of art, UI and UX doesn't just sit on the shelf and become this great deliverable that people just admire and look at over time. You're constantly going to be iterating and continually evaluating and revisiting the UI to ensure that this product changes over time with the user's needs, with technology as it changes and develops. And the great thing about that is there's always opportunity to improve. And that's what I think one of the best fundamental characteristics that a UI UX designer can have, is that hunger to improve and to make the product better for their end user. And so some of your common deliverables in this phase are going to be analytics and digging into analytics and feedback and user interface interactions and iterating on that, on those interactions and iterating on that interface to provide the best possible experience for your user. It's a great opportunity to leverage user feedback, and that happens in a variety of ways. It can happen through user interviews. It can happen through analytics on your site. It can happen through a survey that might be on your site where you ask, hey, we love your feedback on this product. And you can see some examples here from Hotjar of how they've received great feedback from their product. And it also helps you evaluate new feature design. And so you can say, we can see a lot of users requesting this specific feature about a product or this specific feature in an application. let's see how we might bake that back into the product and iterate on it and make it great for our end users. So that's it, the UI UX process. These 4 principles, we're going to explore those in this course in this semester as well. Starts with discovery and research, moves into wireframing, actually starting to visualize that in a low fidelity form, moves into more high fidelity or designing it or visualizing it, and then always test and always learn after it's been launched from your end user and iterate to make a great product. And this cycle can repeat over and over and over again as your product grows and matures over time. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes going over what we mean with when we say interaction design, what UI UX is, some of the different phases of that process, and some of the different deliverables that you might be asked to produce as a UI UX designer. We're going to go into all those deliverables in detail in a different video, but hopefully this has served as a great overview of what to expect with interaction design or UI or UX design. All right, talk to you guys later. Thanks.